Welcome. If you're just logging in, go ahead and put where you're watching from and what type of art you do. So glad you're all here. I know that being a thriving artist, there's so many different ways that we can do that. Hi, Marilyn. Where are you watching from? What kind of art do you do? New Jersey. Okay, thank you. And what kind of art do you create? Oh, you're a painter. Awesome. Watercolor, oils, acrylic, mixed media. What type? I love painting. I've been painting majority of my life. If you're just coming on, go ahead and put where you're watching from and what type of art you do, what type of art you create. Because I know that I work with sculptors. It's always been acrylic, however, started with a very good instructor who prefers oils. You know what? I did the same exact thing. I started off with oils and I kept wondering about acrylics and it was so funny because it was this group of women. I started off with a hobby class and they all did oils and I was perplexed with the idea that it took a year or two to create a painting. Like, why can't we just do it in a couple of days or a couple of hours in some cases? And was was told, no, 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 you don't need acrylics. So I'm glad that you've been able to try both. So now that you know. So if you're just watching, go ahead and put where you're watching from. My alarm's going off. Where you're watching from and what kind of art you do. And we'll get started in just a couple of moments. So, is anyone a sculptor? I know we've got a painter. Marilyn's a painter. Anyone else? So, and where are you watching from? Maryland, Lynn. Okay, perfect. I love abstract expressionism. Um, Hans Hoffman is probably my favorite of all the artists as far as abstract expressionism goes. So, Marilyn, awesome. Anyone else? So I'm glad everyone is here. So, okay, I'm gonna go ahead. It's 8:01. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. And so if you have any questions or anything, go ahead and put your hand up, and then I'll see if I can see that. And I'll answer questions as we kind of go, or I can answer questions at the end. So however that works. And then I'm gonna share my slideshow. All right. So thriving as an artist. What's next? So I love like when artists get to this point because you can tell that they're really passionate, they're really dedicated, and they are moving forward with their art. And so what is next with that next step? And that could look like a lot of different things. It's in so many different areas. I see that there's a lot of painters here, but there's also sculptors and there's you know jewelry making and just a variety of different types of art. And so, what does that look like? How do you create a strategy and clarity for the creative growth? And just so you know, I'm Michelle Renee Stone, and so we'll talk a little bit about me. But I am so glad that you're all here today, and that you're in this space to where you're ready to take those next steps. And so, welcome. I am a therapeutic art life coach. I have been creating art, well, since I was 5, so my entire life. And my passion is to help artists get to that next level, have clarity, and help and have a strategy and direction and confidence to get to those next levels so they can become as successful as they possibly can. And tonight's focus is that strategic expansion. I have what I call the artist creative cycle. You start off with curiosity, and then you go into where you're starting to express yourself, and then you go into where you want to expand, and then you go into the strategic expansion. And so this area is a great place to be because you've kind of already gone through the whole cycle and you've dealt with a lot of different things. And so now you're ready to figure out like what is that next step. And so, and what are your biggest struggles? And I'm going to ask you in a little bit to kind of share with me what your biggest struggles are as an artist right now, because we can address those this evening. So, and what to expect tonight. So, explore this strategic expansion and what that really means, because it's not only is it a strategic way of making more money, of putting yourself out there, of being more visible, but it's also what a lot of people don't talk about is that it's a somatic expansion. And what that means is like a way of like your body and your mind expanding all at the same time, because that part is really important. Otherwise, sometimes self-sabotage comes along, or people get stuck in that creative cycle. And so, and then to assess what's working best for your art and your audience, and gaining clarity and selling work in your ideal markets, creating a clear and aligned vision for your next 6 months, and then ending with, and I like to do an embodiment exercise at the end, because as artists, as creatives, we like to do things with our with our hands. And so to get to the end of this, and after everything that we talk about, we'll do an exercise. Typically, I have colored pencils, pens, and a notepad. So if you want to go ahead and grab that now as we get started, I will, you'll have that ready when the time comes. So who's this masterclass for? It's for people who are already experienced in their careers. They've had several shows. They probably have a CV that's at least a page long, and they're stepping into that next phase. They're winning awards. Their confidence is, they know that people like their artwork. They're starting to see patterns, and they know, and possibly even teaching classes and selling the work. And so growing intentionally is a really important part of this phase, because it helps you understand, it helps you get to that next level without burning out. So who am I? Michelle Renee Stone. I've spent, as I mentioned earlier, I've been an artist since I was 5 years old. And I took all the art classes that I possibly could in grade school and high school. But I came from that generation of where, I have a whole family of entrepreneurs, and they told me, business is the way to go. That if you become an artist, then only dead artists make money, and if you become an artist, then you'll be a starving artist. That whole kind of concept. And so I spent a lot of time um, in my 20s going to business school and college for business and international relations and things like that, thinking that that was the way that I wanted to go, the way that I was supposed to go. But I felt this hole inside of me where I felt like I just couldn't quite grasp what I really what felt congruent inside. And and it wasn't until my late 20s, where I had a friend of mine who shared with me. He was like, Michelle, if you're waking up at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, drawing out your dreams, art is probably not your hobby. And so shortly thereafter, I moved. At the time, I lived in Florida in the U.S. and moved to Columbus, Ohio, and started going to Columbus College of Art and Design. And I did that for a while, and then I actually got called to start teaching art to children. And so between the creating my art career there, or starting my art career in Columbus, and then also teaching art to children, I started to become more fulfilled and more um, the like understanding of what my life's purpose was, and that's really what helped me get in this path. And so I was in Columbus for several years, and then I ended up moving back to Florida. And since I've been here, I've worked in the nonprofit art sector for over 25 years, and just working with different artists of different calibers, curating, teaching everyone from literally from 4 to 104, and just helping artists and just people in general, like really hone in on what their success on what they want to do in their life, and create a way for them to go in that direction and sustain it and become successful. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. Um, and so this young man that's next to me in the surfboard is I have a 20-year-old son, and he's just my whole heart. And so that's a little bit about me. And then the picture on the left is actually me when I first moved to Ohio, and that is my very first metal sculpture, and I won third place in my first juried show. And it's called The Idea of Comfort Setting In. And so it was a chairs art show in Westerville, Ohio, which is just outside of Columbus. So yeah, so that's kind of where I started, and then this picture was taken recently of my son and I. So what does a strategic expansion mean? It's expanding, it's like going through that cycle where you're inspired, you're starting to create, you're putting your artwork out in the world, and now you're like, okay, so I've won awards, I'm selling my work, I'm doing the shows, maybe even traveling to different markets and things, and I'm selling, but what is next? Like, what is that next phase for the artist? And so, and like I was saying earlier, the expansion part of it is not only is it what is next for my career, like what is kind of hones in on the type of art that I do, but as people, we up level only to a certain ability, to where like our mental and our physical capacity gets to, like where it is. And so like if we're at this next level, we've done all of the things that I mentioned, and then we're here. Sometimes when we get to that strategic expansion part where we're like, okay, I want to make more money, I want to sell more art, I want to put my art out in different places, there there's there's a sense of curiosity, absolutely. And then there's also a sense of like, oh geez, what do I have to do next? And so a lot of the time people think, oh my gosh, I have to do more. And that's not always necessarily the case. And so it's the idea of like not only slowly and gradually moving from one space to the other, but also being smart about it, being deliberate about like utilizing your time in the best way possible, and aligning your biggest vision for yourself. And a lot of the time there's as artists, we're very intuitive people, and we're very sensitive the majority of the time. And so think about like what is congruent inside of who you are as an artist and as a person, and just start to ask yourself like what is that next right move. And so these are the kind of things that will help you get to the like have clarity and get to that next space. And so Jennifer, Jennifer is one of those people who is had a really easy transition in for where she was, where she started, and now where she is. And so she started off as a school as an arts educator, and she taught every grade in possible in the school system in three different states. And and then I met her back in 2018, and she was at that point where she's like, okay, so I'm ready to take that next level. And it was just prior to that that she had the books that you see in front of her, she had an opportunity to start illustrating books, and so she started doing that, and that was like that next level. And then from there, what she started doing is she started getting commissions for self-portraits and portraits of the family members and animals and things like that. And so she's selling her work now. She's got commissions. She actually has some commissions of some in the area where I work, there's a lot of sports teams, and so she's got commissions from sports people, who are on these teams, and for people who are on these teams. And so she's getting to that next level of what, you know, what is right for her. And where did that start? So that started with her having an art degree and and teaching and teaching, as an art educator, and then just gradually figuring out like, okay, so what is that next move that I need to do that feels that resonates inside of me. And magically, not magically, but in her periphery came this opportunity to illustrate these books. And so that's where that started. And so it's like stepping stones for Jennifer. And so key insights on expansion. Um, and so if you've been creating artwork for a while, you've been painting, you've been sculpting, whatever the case may be, you may start to see patterns of things that resonate with you. Maybe you have bodies of work, and then as you're putting it out in the world, out at the shows and the galleries and different things, you'll start to see how people resonate with with the artwork that you're creating. And so start to like identify certain patterns. Are they going more toward the illustrations? There's a lot of, I live in Florida, and so there's a lot of people, a lot of tourists come down and they want a lot of beach work, a lot of like, they want to feel that tranquility when they go back home to maybe the northern states or other countries or things like that. And so start to just identify, pay attention to what is selling, what feels most congruent with inside of you and what you're creating. Because as you're creating artwork, people like literally feel, um, they feel the energy that you're putting into it. I can tell you every time, as I curate in different areas of town, every time I change out a show, the energy in the room changes. And so you could feel, it's interesting because it depends on the topic too. So if like I remember, it's October, so during the October months, sometimes the energy would be a little bit more eerie and a little bit more spooky. And then other times, like in February, sometimes it's all about love. And different parts of the year is different themes, and really kind of depending upon what the theme is, but you can definitely feel it, the difference in the energy. And then understanding true alignment with the difference between opportunity and distraction. And so as you're stepping into what is more congruent, what is like what speaks to me, what speaks to my clientele, it's important to think about, sometimes as artists, we can have 12,000 different ideas, right? And then we've got, this notebook and that notebook, and we're not quite sure which direction to go. I was actually talking to an artist last night in my creative accountability group, and she was saying how she had 12 different ideas for this upcoming piece that she's doing, and she had to draw them all out in order to land on one particular one. And so, and I know that they do that also in art college. In college, when you go for arts, is like, they have you draw at least 20 different references of something out just so you can kind of fine tune that idea. And so the difference between the opportunity and the distraction. And so kind of honing in on what works well for you and what works best for your clientele. It's like the patterns that you're starting to see, and then understand that you need to hone in on that, because if you're thinking about, if your clientele is asking you to do more, let's say animals, right? You want to do more like pet portraits or whatever. And then you get this idea that, I need to start doing, um, I don't know, I'm just gonna, because you can tell I like mixed media. So you get this hunch to start doing mixed media and something else. Um, that's great, but it's not, sometimes that could be like taking that much of a veer off could be a little bit more of a distraction. So kind of staying where you are and then implementing things slowly. And then recognizing your signs of creative evolution. We all have evolution as, restart, just like riding a bike. You start off where you're wobbly, and then before you know it, you can totally take off on a bike. And so the more that you practice, the more that you're at your art easel or your table or whatever it is you're in your studio, the more that you evolve, the more that your practice evolves. And so, and expanding with clarity and not chaos. And so just kind of really having an idea of like honing in on what works best. And I say that because Cindy Stevens is this particular artist, and she has a show up right now where she's a sculptor, and that's one of her lions. She has got a couple of lions and some a bird, and you'll see some other things. And for her, it was interesting because she has dabbled in painting and she has dabbled in other things, but sculpture is like her true love. And what was a natural progression for her is, as she was sculpting things, when you're putting the armature underneath it, you don't always necessarily have the armature, with it being wire, doesn't always necessarily move the way that you want it to. And so what Cindy actually did is she started creating these models that go underneath the pieces of work. And so, and she started printing them out on her 3D printer. And and then she actually ended up creating um, some kits that will help support not only her sculpture process, but also other people's sculptures. And so, she's and it's becoming really successful for her. So it's one of those things where it was like for her, it was a natural progression of how can I create better sculptures that are more anatomically correct. And so creating these what she calls kits underneath to help that process. And so and then you can see, Cindy and I have done some work together, so you can kind of read that. So, business clarity deep dive. So let's look at what's working in your business. I would like, if it's possible, let's see. So, show which shows or galleries brought your best response. So start to think about that. So, like when you're in these different shows, I know that sometimes it could be hit or miss as to whether your work sells or whether it gets compliments or depending upon the clientele. Start to think about what brought about your best responses. When you went to the art receptions, did you get good feedback on pieces? Did you sell any work? How are your price points? Things like that. So these are all things that kind of that that matter when you're moving forward, as far as like making that next step. And then what are the themes, the mediums, or the color palettes that resonate the most? And so again, going back to some people, I'm just gonna just talk painting for a little bit because at least two of you are painters here. And so, I have another client who does a lot of pet portraits. Um, and then would it make sense for someone to ask her to do a regular portrait of a person? Yes, but her focus is really pet portraits, and that's what she's excellent at doing. And so, would it take her a little bit of growth, a little bit of a learning curve to do regular portraits? Absolutely. Is it possible? Yes. But I think the timing for her needs to be right because right now she's just really doing great with these pet portraits and she's getting a lot of commissions and and so that's really working well for her. Is she in a space where she could take carve time out so that she could learn how to do regular portraits? She could. It is a possibility. And then what would that look like balancing out your time? And then also when you're selling your work, like your medium, so do you paint in watercolor? Do you paint in acrylic? Do you paint in both? Which one are you better at? Which one resonates more with your clientele, with your art collectors? And then also, your palette, the color palettes. So again, here in Florida, um, there's a lot of tourists want to come and see that, they purchase the beach scenes or the shells or things like that. So there's like a lot of blues and a lot of creams and tans and things like that. And so are those the color palettes that resonate or are they more vibrant like, these bright pinks and bright purples and phthalo greens and phthalo blues and things like that. And so, just kind of pay attention to that. And then also, if you're tracking your sales of your artwork, what patterns stand out? Are they the bigger pieces? Are they the smaller pieces? Are they the realism? Are they the more abstract pieces that are selling? And if they are the abstract pieces, is it a certain color combination? Or is it a certain like way that you're applying it? Are you using palette knives? Are you just basic, brush strokes? Those kinds of things. So start to think about that. And so Kathy is one of those. I met Kathy also back in 2018. And for her and her success, the picture on the left is when I met her. She was an emerging artist, and she came to me and she was telling me that she liked to get antique frames, minimum 50 years old. A lot of them were 100 years old, and then she would paint pictures and the whole idea is like past, present, and future. And so the past would mean the frames, the antique frames. The present is that foreground that's right there in front of her window. And then the future would be like what's in on the other side of the window. And she brought me when I had that emerging artist exhibit, she brought me three paintings that were very similar to that. And so that's where she started. And she was newly retired, stepping into that next phase of her life. And then COVID happened. So you see the picture in the center of us of both she and I with our masks. And she started turning recycled materials. So she took her idea of wanting to save and treasure things from the past into what can I do in the middle of COVID where I can't really go anywhere and I can't really do anything and what would that look like and so for her specifically. And so what she did is she started all of the bugs and the creatures that you see around us are made from egg cartons, a lot of like sustainable type of materials that she had that she was getting through the groceries, um, and things like that. There's literally a 4 foot praying mantis between the two of us. It was so funny. And then if you look at Kathy to the right, uh, now it's post COVID, and she's got those three chickens that are just adorable, and then the dragonfly that's above her. So she's still utilizing these sustainable materials, and that dragonfly actually sold that night at that particular art reception. And so now she's teaching classes and she actually her latest piece came out 2 days ago and she's doing this recycled chandelier from the ceiling. So it's, so she was able to pivot during COVID and kind of hone in on the things that are best for her and her practice, and and it's doing her, it's doing really, really well for her. And so yeah, I'm just really thrilled for Kathy. And so know your demographic. Um, so who's buying your art and why? And so when you're thinking about where you're showing your artwork and the type of people who are buying it, are they people who shop at like local markets? Are they people who prefer to shop online? Are they different generations? Are they through referrals, or are they galleries? Are they collectors? Are they like where are your where is your clientele coming from? What is their background that is purchasing your art? And then how do you, and if you don't know, like maybe they're buying it online, um, how do you find out? Can you, have a conversation with them? Just so you can start to track and see like what that looks like for your particular type of artwork. And and so because like people who shop at local markets are going to be a little bit different than people who shop, on websites. And so that those kind of things are important to think about. And what motivates their purchase? With the abstract expressionism, it's a lot of people, it moves them internally in a way where they don't necessarily understand, but there's some kind of emotion that is involved with that. And then you have realism, and so with realism, a lot of people are moved to that in a different way. And so just try to like have these conversations with the collectors if possible to see what is motivating their purpose or their purchase. And then how can you nurture that? How can you continue to replicate that so you can have more of those sales and sell more of, art to people? And so this is Gwendolyn Aki Brooks and Bernard Brooks. They have these two are these two are just like the epitome of what that looks like. They owned galleries in Washington, D.C., and they know exactly what kind of art that they create, and who their clientele are. If you look over both of their heads, those are Gwendolyn's paintings. And so she does these beautiful vibrant pieces that are um, not necessarily realism, but they're fun, they're folky, and people really resonate with them. And so she also creates quilts, and then she sews like little tchotchkes, little things inside of in those paintings, or sometimes she glues them on. And then Bernie, his style is very similar. It's less people, it's more abstract, but he also incorporates different additional 3D elements into his pieces. And so, but they know exactly who their demographic is, and who purchases their artwork. That was actually up in Atlanta at Black Art in America at an art reception that I went to last month. So um, it's they're very clear on who purchases their art, and I think that that's what's helped them continue to move forward in both of their careers. Then understanding your numbers, like your best selling points. So what are your top selling pieces in the collections? And so if you have different bodies of work, what does that look like? Like I know that I have a bunch of paintings behind me, but I also have these 3D pieces that I do that are, a lot of them are found objects. And so that are very intriguing, and they tell their own story in their own way. And so, what are your, if you think about like what are your top selling pieces or your collections? Do you have one collection that is more of a top seller, and then another collection that is not necessarily, but like what order are they, did you create them in? And think about it that way. And then as you're talking to different artists or different collectors, ask them, what about these particular pieces do you like? What draws you in? And then also thinking about one of the other points that I think is important as artists to understand is their price points, is like how to price artwork. I know that I'm constantly getting questions about that type of thing, like how do I'm an emerging artist, or I'm just stepping into it and I don't quite know, or I've been doing this for a little bit and I don't think that my pricing is accurate. Can you help me figure out if it is accurate or if I need to bump it up or lower it or things like that? And so when you're thinking about the profitable price point for your particular work, is it middle of the road? Is it a little bit higher? Is that could be why it's not selling, or is it a little bit too low and you're selling more? And so if it is like on the lower end and you're selling more of it, then maybe bump your prices up. And what would that look like? Maybe like a 10% increase or a 20% increase, and look at your profit margins and think about that. And if your price points are a little high and you're not selling as much work, maybe take a look at that and do a little bit of research and see what works for you as far as what other people who are doing similar work like yours, um, and what price points that they're selling theirs at. And so, and are you seeing consistent engagement in sales? if if you're seeing consistent engagement in sales with certain collections, then continue doing that, right? Or you can veer a little bit, maybe um I don't know, maybe again going back to pet portraits. I don't know why I'm kind of stuck on that today, but pet portraits, and then maybe you could do like more scenes with different animals or with several animals in there as opposed to just the portraits. Maybe start to step into the different body styles and things like that. I'm thinking of instead of doing a zebra head, do a herd of zebra, something like that. And then how do you scale sustainably without losing the creativity? That is one of those things that, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Stay within, if you're going to step outside of your box and try something new, do it's best to do it where you're doing it a little bit at a time. And I say that because, and a couple of different realms, because like if you totally take a left-hand turn and you go a different direction, then you're starting something absolutely new. And so, how can you um what's the word I'm looking for? How do you like do them both at the same time as you're trying something new? That's like what I was talking about earlier. Step into the regular portraits a little bit at a time, kind of batch your time out and dedicate some time to the regular portraits. And then, a lot of the bulk of your other time to the regular pet portraits. But without like losing that creativity, of course, draw out all of your ideas and things like that. And but as you're scaling, also remember when at the very beginning of this I was talking about the like how our body is used to a certain level of where we are. And so there's this something called the somatic system within inside our body. And so if we're selling, let's say we're selling, I don't know, 10 paintings a year and each painting is $1,000. I'm just throwing out numbers here. And so, and you want to scale to maybe, 20 paintings a year, or bump it up to 15 paintings a year and then increase some of your prices. So that is like something that would be sustainable, right? But when it comes to like doing something that's completely like that huge next level jump, um, it'll be a little bit more challenging because you're going to have to figure out your timing and then your process and all of that. But there's also going to be a part in your body where it's like, wait, we're stepping up too much. It's like too much too soon. And then your body starts to bucket that. And then that's when the self-sabotage starts to come up. So just, just grow gradually so that your body can kind of keep up with that. And so I'm thinking of this particular person. There's an artist that I know. His name is Alan, and that's part of his picture. He did this beautiful Chadwick Boseman piece before, right after Chadwick died. It just brought tears to my eyes. But Alan is one of those where he is creating his work. He's fine-tuned his clientele. He knows exactly who he's gearing all of his work toward. He's noticed a lot of patterns in the people that he sells his work to. And and so what he's doing is he has this marbling technique that he does with portraits, and he just creates more different types of portraits with that same marbling technique. And he's at this point where he's ready. The last time I talked to him about a month and a half ago, he told me he's like, I'm ready to quit my full-time job. I just because and he goes to not markets, he goes to festivals and he sells tens of thousands of dollars worth of work every week, every time he goes to a market. And so he's like, I think it's time. And so he's one of those who, once he realized, he's fine-tuned his process, he knows what works, he knows how to frame it, he knows what sizes are best. He actually does prints as well. And and then, so he was selling everything here locally, and then he started saying, well, you know what, I think I'm going to start going out to festivals. And then that's where it started scaling for him. And, he's got a great support system. And so for him, it's one of those things that it does make sense. And that, he was able to scale up and do what what he wanted to do so he could, live the dream that he wants to live. So reflect and vision. And so this is one of those moments where like we start to get out our notebook and start to think about like take a few moments and what is working best for you right now. Like what makes the most sense? What is what is working? Um, and so take a couple of moments and jot that down. And then also, start to think about like the things that, because, in order for us to rise to that next level, we have to, we have to also release some things that are no longer working for us. And so start to write down also the things that we need to release to make space for what is next. That's also part of that somatic system within inside our body. Um, and where do you feel most energized in your art and in your business? And so is it with the pet portraits or is it with the 3D sculpture or is it, the abstract expressionism this way or maybe more an impressionism this way? Or, just think about like what is makes you feel most energized and then how can you tweak it a little bit and kind of hone in on that. And then what is one area you want to grow within the next 6 months? So these are just the things to think about. And this is the part where I like to do the embodiment exercise. And so I just mentioned, you have your supplies. So pull out your notebook. I've got my little handy dandy notebook here. And then here's what I'd like for you to do. It's 8:41, so I think we're gonna do maybe 8:42. I'll do like 8 minutes, and I'll turn on some music, um, and name a part of your art career that you want to become more proficient in, and then and kind of close your eyes and imagine yourself 6 months from now and how you've honed in on that space, on where you want to be and draw a moment in time of you experiencing the feeling of succeeding in that area. And so I'm going to turn on some music, and I'll give you it's 8:42. I'll give us 8 minutes, and so go ahead and start drawing that out, and I'll keep this image up. Okay. You know, it's quiet. Oh. I'm gonna turn on my microphone. Can you guys hear that okay? And these images don't have to be perfect. We're just artists, just kind of. The idea is to have the to embody the direction that we want to go. About 2.5 minutes left. Okay. Oh, good grief. All right. How's everybody doing? Did you draw out your image? I doodle a lot, so um, mine is a very quick and very sloppy doodle, and I I am imagining, because the natural progression for me after these master classes is that I've decided to do a podcast, and so here's my image of two people sitting in blue chairs, um, with the plant in between us. I didn't get a chance to like fill it all in, but it's really sloppy. Um, but yeah, just a podcast that I'm going to be starting in about 6 months. Actually, it'll start in May of next year. That that focuses on connecting highly successful artists and asking them questions and interviewing them so that they can share their tips and tricks and successes and failures and all the things that have helped them get to where they are, on a podcast and also on my YouTube. So that's that. So that's kind of what I'm about to step into. So I hope that for you that you had something that was similar to that, where like that you can kind of just really embody and step into and look at for like that next part of the direction that you want to go. And so the key takeaways, I think growth, when it comes to stepping into like that next phase, growth doesn't mean like knocking your head against the wall and trying to, you know, just beat yourself up and do all the things. It's, it's being conscious about the direction that you want to go. It's looking at the things that work and doing more of that. It's stepping into the things that bring you greater joy and bring others great joy when they're purchasing your artwork. And then also, the having that support, like what I was talking about with the Brookses, is that they have support, and also Alan, creating that support around you, and then and being able to talk to like-minded friends. I know the artists think we have our own way of thinking, and so sometimes people don't necessarily always understand us. I know I personally I think in pictures, and so then I sometimes I have to like translate them. Hold on, I'm seeing that there's stuff in the chat. Oh, there's your doodle. Oh, hold on. Let me see. I want to see. I just finished. Oh, perfect. Okay. Thank you for showing the doodle. And what do you envision yourself doing in 6 months? If you want to share, you don't have to share. I'm just thinking I'm asking, but that's amazing that you're there and that you're like, okay, this is what I want to do in 6 months. Be working in a research capstone to create comic adaptation for history research. That's fantastic. Oh my gosh. Yes. And you know what? And this is one of those things that as you're drawing it out and you're creating it, is you're starting to put it out in the universe. And then when we take things from our brain out into our hands, like, most artists are, there's three different ways to learn: kinesthetic, audio, and visual. And so as artists, a lot of the time that we're like 90% plus in kinesthetics, and that's that handwriting. And so bringing it from your head out down your arm and onto paper, it makes it more solid, makes it more doable in your world. And so that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. Does anyone else want to share their pieces? And that's okay. I can continue going. Uh, okay. So the takeaway, so your next step should support your creativity. And so making those kind of decisions that will help support what the direction that you want to go, and doing the things that align with that. And then expansion, again, is about alignment. The creative, the emotional, and the financial aspect of it is doing the things that make the most sense for the direction that you want to go with your life. And with the things that you want to invest into to bring into your world. And so the best strategy is the one that honors your energy and your vision. And so what's already inside of you. And so just following that step, that direction that best suits you and best serves what feels right and what is actually working. Because the part of like what is actually working is that's the most important part, because the artwork that you create that sells is what you want to continue to put out in the world. And so the closings, so the next steps is take, like, what is one small aligned action this week that you can take toward your next step? Go ahead and put that in the chat for me. Just one more small, just aligned action. So coming to this masterclass is actually one of those aligned actions. That is something that you were called here to be here this evening to take that next step. And so, what is another step that you could do? And so just start to think about that. And again, keep refining what's working and stay connected with your clarity of purpose. If you have that where deep inside of you like what direction that you're going, right, that's amazing. Not everybody has that. And so that's actually one of the things that I help people with. And so I have a program that's 6 months long, and that someone else just popped in again. So that that helps people that go from, whoops, I see it, someone in the chat. Let me see what we got. For yourself, I'm working with my own group to draft character designs for our eventual capstone research this coming week. Oh, fantastic. So you have like a group of other artists that are creating the characters with you? Is that what's happening, Senji? Oh yeah, you're a group of five. That's fantastic. Are you all drawing the same kind of characters, or are they different characters from different parts of the story? I have another one of my clients that she's actually colorblind, and she draws. I've been working with her for like the last 5 years, and so she didn't know she was colorblind until like 6 months before I met her, and now she's able to tune into like all the different variations and the different shades and tints of color. It's amazing. We're we're trying to envision an art direction for the comic. So yes, different characters and different parts to design. That's fantastic. I'm so glad that all of you are coming together and creating that together, because that's the kind of support that we're talking about, is, being able to have this same kind of conversation with people. Every time I have an art reception, at the very end, I embarrass people. I'm like, all right, if you're an artist, raise your hand, because of course, not everyone in the art receptions are artists. And then I'm like, all right, so look around the room and find someone you haven't met yet, and go ask them about their artwork, because we understand each other. And so, what better way to feel supported than to stay connected with the people that understand us? So, so that's that. Congratulations, Sinji. I think that's wonderful. And so da, 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 da. So the what I do is I actually help people who are getting. Oh, I have another chat. Let me see. Give me just a second. Oh, of course, of course. Um, Building the business with clarity and ease. I help artists get to that next level and build their businesses. Um, with clarity and ease, have that direction, that like clear direction, that confidence to take those next steps. And so with strategy and understanding, and it's one of those things that artists need, because we are really good with creating work, and a little bit more challenging with the whole business side of things. So I help people with the business side of things too. So I offer 18 one-on-one coaching sessions. It's 3 weeks on and then 1 week off. Um, and then two not divine, sometimes intuitively divine. Um, uh, the two lifeline calls. So I also have I mentioned earlier, a creative accountability group that I have every Monday, where people come in and we share our art, and our art processes, and kind of bounce ideas off of one another. I also have a weekly newsletter that goes out, and then I have a private meditation library that goes along with it, and then master classes and journal prompts and testimonials and things like that. What else do we have here? Get another. How do you know if your artwork is ready to be shown? Well, if your artwork is ready to be shown, it kind of depends. Is it finished? Does it need to be framed? Um, like what I think there's a little bit more to that than like I'd probably have to have a conversation with you about it to have an idea of what it and to help you walk through what it means to for the artwork to be shown. So maybe we can schedule a call for that if you'd like. And so, in my process, what you'll learn and what we'll implement is, how to build your story, how to create your bio and your brand presence, how to confidently price your work, your aligned marketing strategies and all the social medias, what that looks like, how can you kind of streamline everything, developing a plan for the direction that you want to go and where you want to be in 6 months and how you want to get to that next level, how you want to, like help grow your group or how you want to create more visibility with your work, how you want to figure out what direction to go with your particular artwork. And so, and working from a place of confidence and direction and like knowing what that looks like, the direction that you want to go and laying out like the different ways to get there. And then who is this for? It's specifically for artists to help them get to that next level of their life, of their career, without spinning their wheels and to kind of hone in on their gifts, like what they're best at, and to provide them that structure and that also accountability because sometimes we can want to go different places and we can want to get to that next level, but getting there and then taking the little steps that get us there can sometimes be really challenging because we have the artist blocks, sometimes we have the self-sabotage because we're up leveling and we're moving our somatic expansion, our somatic uh, awareness or expanding it to where we're up leveling. And so, like I mentioned before, that's a whole thing. But what does that look like? So for my 6 month coaching package, it's 18 one-on-one classes, about an hour long. The total investment for you and your career is $3,450, which is only 6 payments of, $575. And I also have a newsletter. It comes out once a week, sometimes even twice a week. I will send out the replay for this particular masterclass tomorrow. So all of the links will be in there. So all you have to do is click on, you can find me. And so if you're considering working with Michelle, here's a quote from Cindy. If you're considering working with Michelle, expect your life to change because it will. And you will share your best self with those around you and changing their lives as well. And so this is a QR code for my Calendly. So if you'd like to schedule a 30-minute strategy call with me, go ahead and screenshot that now. Thank you so much for joining me today and for the Thriving as an Artist and Now What's Next aspect of your career. And if you're interested in learning more, please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to have a conversation with you and talk about strategy and what your art career can do for you and how to get to that next level. So you can find me again everywhere, Michelle Renee Stone, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Linktree, and on Patreon. And so I do these types of master classes for artists the last Tuesday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so next month I'll be doing the same thing here. And I look forward to seeing you guys here. Let me see. Someone made a mention. Ah, where can I access the archive for the recording of this live session today afterwards? So I will send out an email tomorrow with the live recording, and you'll be able to watch it again. So it'll actually link straight to my YouTube on a private channel. So I'll send that out tomorrow. So are there any other questions for this evening? I appreciate you all being here and communicating and sharing your information with me and doing your exercise, the embodiment exercise, and drawing that out and sharing that with me as well. So if there are no other questions, then I will reach out to you tomorrow through email. And if you have any questions whatsoever, between now and going forward, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you. I appreciate the session and your time too. Absolutely. It is my pleasure. And I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.